The United States had not disclosed Ilya Lichtenstein as an expert witness. What the hell, is going on with this testimony? The defense lawyer was on it. I kind of thought in my mind, this is like somebody in urban warfare going to clear a building.
So why bring him in when you've got an extremely effective expert that's, hey, this is exactly what the fuck happened?
Not clear. We've got a new toy, let's try him out. They had to keep a short leash on him so that he would not start to venture into expert testimony. I think that the concern, if there was one at that time, was going backward.
I think you're right.
He didn't plead to the hack.
Right.
I mean, that's point number one. The only other thing that would have been possibly Eugene. Okay, well, if Eugene did a hack and he was entitled to a cut, that meant that maybe he did it for somebody.
Maybe. It seems to me that I've lost this.
It would not be the first time that, in my assessment, that a son or a father for a son had ever copped to something to get a family member loose.
Right. I'm Brett Johnson, former United States most wanted criminal turned good guy. In today's world, criminals come in all shapes and sizes, but they've all got one thing in common. They've all got criminal thoughts. On today's episode, we are very happy to be welcoming in an attorney by the name of Christopher Anderson. He's going to sit down with me. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Ilya Lichtenstein, Eugene Lichtenstein, Heather Morgan, Bitfinex heist, money laundering, witness protection program, all the shit that's going around that. Christopher is an attorney, and he has an insight that I am not able to bring to the show, so we're going to bring him in. Now, before we get to that point, we've got some news headlines to check in with, and before we get to that point, I got to bitch about something. Recently, it's not like I don't bitch all the time anyway, because I do. I mean, last night, my God, I didn't want to mention that, but last night was the debate. Yes, it was, and we got to see a dead man debating against a sociopath, So we had Joe Biden, who, obviously the man has passed away several months ago. Someone took an old Elmo motor, stuffed up his ass to get him animated. Last night, they must not have put new batteries in because that son of a bitch was DOA on the stage the entire time. If you watch the debate, oh my God, I don't see any way you could still back that dude. I don't. Now, that leaves you with Trump. which gets me into the movie that I watched the other night, Furiosa. Now, how the hell does Trump relate to Furiosa? Because if we're lucky, at the end of the next 4-year cycle of Trump, the world will look a lot like Mad Max. That's right. If we're lucky, I'll tour the land with my trusty pup, looking for gas and water and food and killing every motherfucker that steps in my way. That is the life right there. Anyway, I watched Furiosa. Now, on Rotten Tomatoes, Furiosa has a very high Rotten Tomatoes mark. Its audience rate is very good as well. I found it to be an absolute piece of shit. I did. I am a huge fan of Mad Max. I loved Tom Hardy. I've seen Fury Road. I saw Fury Road in the theaters probably 10 times. I've watched it at the house probably 40 times. It's one of those go-to movies. Immortan Joe, absolutely outstanding. The rest of the cast, the film, great. The old Mad Max movies in anticipation, even though I didn't watch Furiosa in the theater because I didn't want to back a Furiosa film. I wanted a Mad Max film. But in anticipation of watching it at the house, I watched Mad Max, I watched The Road Warrior, I watched Beyond Thunderdome, and I watched at least two versions of Fury Road. I watched the regular Fury Road with the sound, and I watched the black and white Fury Road that only has the music, no dialogue is at all, and it was still out fucking standing. Furiosa, let me tell you, if that is the best that George Miller can do, if that is what he is planning for the rest of the franchise as it goes forward, we do not need any more Mad Max films. It is a complete turd. All the way, if you don't believe me, sit down and watch it. I don't see how you could last any more than 20 minutes in it. I'm not going to say any more because we need to get this show on the road. So let's check in with Brian, see what kind of news stories we got.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has arrived in Australia after he was freed by a United States court in Saipan under a plea deal. Assange's plane landed in Canberra on Wednesday, hours after the 52-year-old pled guilty in a court in Saipan to a charge of espionage relating to obtaining and publishing U.S. military secrets. In the U.S. Pacific Territory courtroom, District Judge Ramona Manglona had sentenced Assange to 5 years and 2 months, the time he spent in prison in the United Kingdom fighting extradition to the U.S., and said he was free to go.
So the mouse-faced man himself is free. You know, I met Julian Assange. I did. I met him once upon a time. It was when I began my legal career, and I was not... See, back then, I had started speaking and consulting, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money, and I did not know if I was going to go back to a life of profitable crime. Fortunately, I didn't, but back then, I was really taking any speaking gig I could get, and there was this guy, Marcus Benton was his name. He ran a series of cybersecurity conferences over in the UK. So he messages me one day, and he's like, "Hey, Brett, why don't you come over? I'll pay your flight. And I'll pay you a very small pittance to speak, and you'll get to meet Julian Assange." Julian Assange, fuck, I don't like him, but I'd like to meet him. Well, they had him remote in, and I got to meet him, ask him a couple questions, stuff like that. So Julian Assange, I was absolutely impressed with his the way that he was able to put narratives together, and the overall brilliance of the man. Now, that being said, I was far less impressed with his hubris, because that dude is one prideful son of a bitch. And I was also less impressed with his overall cognitive dissonance, because he was at that point in time, he was housed up at the Ecuadorian embassy. And, he wasn't coming off the compound, because if he did, the U.S. was going to arrest his ass and send him over to the United States, where he's going to do 30 years. So he kept saying during his remote in that, he had been incarcerated at that embassy for this many months, and, it's the same as prison. And I'm sitting there going, son of a bitch, you ain't been to prison. You got a fucking apartment. You got a pet cat. You got visitors all the time. They're bringing you carry out. That ain't fucking prison. What are you talking about? So I was far less impressed with that. And I've always said that I really hoped that the gentleman would get his day in court. I'm not a fan of his. Now, that being said, he's out, he's free. He pled guilty to espionage because, yes, he was guilty of that shit, and they let him go. Now, why did they do that? Well, they did that because the Biden administration saw the writing on the wall. They understood that, hey, the whole UK political system's about to change, and they're not going to send Julian Assange's ass over to the United States for him to serve a lot of time. So they decided to make this deal. They let him go. My thought on that is that I really hope that Julian Assange makes the most of the opportunity and the freedom that he has been granted. Hopefully he will stop with the crying and the whining about, being housed in an apartment someplace. Yeah, he served some time in jail now, waiting on extradition, so that's over. I hope the best for the guy. I really do. End of the day, I hope the best. Brian, let's carry on.
On June 24th, Russian ransomware group Lockbit claims it had breached the U.S. Federal Reserve and is threatening to release 33 terabytes of sensitive data, including Americans' banking secrets. While the Federal Reserve has not confirmed the hack, a number of cybersecurity experts are discounting Lockbit's claims, saying there are no published samples of the stolen data.
Lockbit comes out and they said, hey, we hit the Federal Reserve. We got 33 terabytes. Terabytes, mind you. So 1 terabyte, to give you an idea of how big 33 of them are, 1 terabyte is basically 6 million documents. Okay, so Lockbit came out and said, we got 33 terabytes of the Federal Reserve. We gonna fuck you motherfuckers up like you ain't never even thought about getting fucked up before. We are mean, we are bad, and we got your ass, motherfucker. Turns out that we had a lot of cybersecurity experts. I am not one of them. A lot of cybersecurity experts that said, we really think that Lockbit is lying. We think they are full of shit. We think they don't even know what they're talking about. So I came out because I tend to be the voice of reason. So I came out. I can't even say that with a straight face myself. So I came out and I said, they may have hit the Federal Reserve, and let's be fair about it. If they did, the Federal Reserve is going to deny. This is exactly the type of thing that the United States government would never, ever admit. I said that on Twitter, said that on LinkedIn, said that on Facebook. Well, this dude immediately chimes in. It's probably fake. Don't take my word for it, but it probably ain't real. So I had to put up with that. And it turns out that, they did not hit the Federal Reserve. They hit the Evolve Bank. So Evolve Bank is one of these crypto banks. And they had already been lambasted by the Federal Reserve for having improper security and everything else. And it turns out that Lockbit hit them. It also turns out that some of the followers of some of these Twitter talking heads are fucking cult members, assholes, and I hope they're never able to copulate. So you don't know, but before the show started, I was talking about how I really, people that I don't like, I really hope that they're never able to breed. And I was saying, hey, we could make our own little segment about that. And it'd be kind of cute. And then we got into what would that segment look like? What would the bumper look like for it? And I said, well, we could have 2 little stick figures that are trying to get together. And they're not because there's a big red X right there. And I brought that shit up because I was talking about Ilya Lichtenstein, the subject of today's show. And I said, I hope that Ilya, justice would be him never being able to have a child. And I really hope that Heather Morgan is walking down the street one day and her ovaries just drop out and splat on the ground.
Splat.
And for some reason, I don't think that my producer or my editor think that segment would be a good idea for the show. But I'm holding out hope. I am holding out hope. So let's go ahead and get on with some more stories.
Former Democratic Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, recently told HBO host Bill Maher that if former President Trump weren't running for president, he never would have been prosecuted in the state for his hush money payments.
Andrew Cuomo, former Democrat governor of New York. I watched the segment. He was on Bill Maher, and he comes out and he says, talking about Trump, if Trump was not running for re-election, he would have never been charged with any of that shit he's getting convicted for. And Cuomo doesn't stop there. Cuomo goes right on. He says, that's Americans know that. Americans see that. And that's why you see these Americans that are given $5, $10, $25 to the Trump campaign because the son of a bitch gets convicted. And as soon as he gets convicted, I think what did he raise? Like $140 million in 24 hours. It's over $400 million right now that he's raised because of that. It's like the fastest, contributions ever given to a campaign. Can we please admit 2 things? Can we admit that, more than 2 things. Can we admit that, yes, Trump is an asshole? Yes, Trump denied having sex with a porn star. Let me tell you, man, they were getting at it. If they wouldn't getting at it, he wouldn't have paid that bitch $150,000 to keep her mouth shut. And let's not even talk about how inappropriate it is to pay a porn star to keep her mouth shut. That's not what they do. That goes against all logic. Okay, it does. So can we admit that he's an asshole? He was guilty. Absolutely. He pulled that bullshit. But can we also admit that he was targeted by the DOJ? Can we say that? Because by God, he was. And Americans know that. People know. I watched the debate last night. It doesn't take a genius to know that Trump's an asshole. It doesn't. It doesn't. But it doesn't take a genius to know that, hey, yeah, they're targeting the shit out of that dude. And Americans are very good. Americans are very good about looking at things like that type of injustice and saying, I don't think I like that too much. I think I'm going to pull for that son of a bitch. And for some odd reason, we live in a world where the front runner of the U.S. presidential election, Donald Trump, has now been cast, well, until last night, has now been cast as the underdog in the election as well. I don't know how the fuck that happened, but it happened. You want to know what's going to go on? Watch the debate from last night. If you've not watched it, watch it again. That's going to tell you what November is going to look like. And I'm going to say this right now. Tell my wife this. Tell my oldest stepson this. January 20th. If you're not on the Trump bus, they may have a happy camp for you. We call it, re-education camp. The Republicans are calling it happy camps, but they got a place for you. They got a mat. You're going to have to learn how to sleep on a mat about like that. And you're going to go to classes, 3 to 4 hours a day until you learn to toe the Republican line. All right, so it's time for a segment of Crypto Corner. Now, here's the thing. We are going to be splitting off Crypto Corner into its own little channel. Why? Well, because it turns out that some people who want to hear about crypto, they don't want to hear about Brett Johnson talking about crime, or Brett Johnson talking about churches, or Brett Johnson talking about the Bible, or Brett Johnson talking about anything else but crypto. So we're going to split that off into its own little thing to satisfy the hordes that want to hear only about crypto. So today's Crypto Corner. I had a couple of guests that were going to come in, talk about real world assets. They did not make it, but that's okay. We got shit to talk about. Turns out that the Solana chain, so those who are interested in crypto, the only two blockchains that fucking matter right now are the Base chain and the Solana chain. And guess which one's top dog? The Solana chain is top dog. More coins on that than anything else. As a matter of fact, Van Eck yesterday filed for an ETF for the Solana blockchain. Now that follows with the ETF on the Ethereum network and an ETF on Bitcoin itself. That means, so prior to that being filed, most expectations for the Solana token itself were, it's right now trading around the $140 range. Most expectations were at the top of the bull run that it will hit around $600. That has changed completely. Now expectations are it's going to hit maybe $1,500 per token. So bear that in mind when you go to invest in some of these, I'm going to call them blue chip tokens, because I really think that Solana is. Now, that being said, what drives traffic to those specific chains? Memes do, meme coins. In the case of Base, it is Brett. In the case of Solana, guess what it is? It is the Land Wolf token. It's been out about 12, 14 days. It's right now at a market cap of about $150 million. It has, I think it's got like 16,000 holders, maybe more than that right now. Make no mistake about it. That token is going to hit $1 billion. And if it hits $1 billion, when we're talking about meme tokens, there's only been a couple of exceptions. Once a meme token hits $1 billion, it will absolutely do multiples of that billion. So we're talking 2 billion, 5 billion, potentially $10 billion market cap. You might want to look at that. You might want to start buying into some of that. Now, I understand, because I've got a lot of followers. A lot of followers have, they've not really dove into crypto before. What I advocate is, hey, find a couple of these influencers that you can follow, start to learn about crypto, see what they're calling, see how they're investing in tokens, do your own research, and then see if you want to invest in what they're calling at as well. The influencers that I like right now, number one is Crash. He goes by the screen name of Crash. He's on Telegram. He's on Twitter. The Twitter handle is at CrashesClay69. He is outstanding. He is really the most brilliant person that I have absolutely seen across the board when we're talking about understanding crypto and what the markets are doing. Followed by Shmoo, SHMOO NFT on Twitter. He's a great guy as well. And then finally, Invest with Rex. Those are the three top ones. If you don't follow anyone else on crypto, follow those guys. Pay attention to what they're saying because they make great calls. They understand the market, and you will absolutely learn. And that is today's Crypto Corner. All right, so on today's show, people know that I am a little miffed about the Ilya Lichtenstein, Eugene Lichtenstein, Heather Morgan, Bitfinex theft, money laundering scandal. I know it's just a scandal in my head, but it's a scandal. I'm not an attorney. I'm not. I'm a former criminal. I've got a lot of insight on various topics, but I am not an attorney. And today I'm very pleased that my friend Christopher Anderson is coming in to give his insight, and we're going to talk and shoot the shit a bit about the Ilya Lichtenstein stuff that's going on right now. Christopher has looked at some aspects of the case. He's got a lot of insight and understanding that he can bring to the table that I simply can't. So without further ado, let's welcome Christopher Anderson to the Criminal Thoughts Podcast.
Thanks, Brett. I'm glad to be here. Truly.
Dude, I'm glad to have you, man. Truly. I mean, I know that you're an Arkansas fan, hence the hat. And I would say that you're way past being an Arkansas fan. I would say that you are an expert in all things considered Arkansas lore, right?
I don't know about all things. It's certainly early athletic history. Yeah, I'm probably the expert.
Before we dive into Ilya and Company, Arkansas sports, specifically the football. You guys going to do anything this year?
Probably not.
Well, Alabama's not either, as you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was I think Nick Saban's first year was the last year that Arkansas beat Alabama.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may happen this year because I'm not very confident of the coaching staff at Alabama this time around.
Probably the biggest thing, and I had really said this at the time that they were going to Arkansas was going to hire an offensive coordinator, and that the kind of offensive coordinator that they needed was someone with head coaching experience and who could do the offense. Right. And, he tried to do that with our previous offensive coordinator. Of course, my mind's going blank at the moment because he was that memorable in any event. But when Bobby Petrino has a return, he is probably one that can help out Sam Pittman with the head coaching duties and also control the offense at the quarterbacks, which was sorely needed. Now, whether or not it's going to make a difference or not, who knows? I mean, we're playing in the mini NFL, right?
That's it. I mean, that's after NIL. That's exactly what it is now. And I got to tell you, man, I'm absolutely disgusted by that. I don't watch pro ball. College ball, I like it. I don't go out of my way for it, but I like it. But, like you said, mini pro ball, I don't know if I'll ever get used to that or even like it, as it continues down that path, that spiral that obviously is the reason that Nick Saban stepped aside.
Yeah. I can't see it any other way myself.
Yeah. So let me ask you, we were talking the other day about Ilya, and I did not know that it was called CIPA. That's what it is, right?
Oh, CIPA, Classified Information Procedures
Classified.
Act. Right. Yes.
So you brought that up, and I asked if you would like to come on the show And we could just shoot the shit some about the Ilya
Sure.
case. I could ask you some questions about SEPA, things like that. And you said gracefully, you said yes. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. I got to tell you, Christopher, I don't know how we're going to start the conversation, but I'm a legal guy, and I guess I was under the false impression that the institutions that are out there, now that I've become a legal guy, that the institutions out there would do the right damn thing. And I just don't see that in this case. You know, they're putting him in witness protection for some odd reason that I simply do not understand. The same thing for the dad. And as a matter of fact, Eugene, he is MIA right now. We know that because a buddy of mine took it upon himself to see if he was still at that Chicago address, and he is not. So figured we could come in and just talk about that, maybe get some insight, get your thoughts on the matter,
Sure.
things like that.
I think probably a couple of things that I would want, people to know. I've done, practice law for 32 years, and had a number of criminal cases that I've done over the years. I won't go into all of it, but
Right.
I pretty much cut my teeth in. People who've been around for a while might have remembered a HBO special called Banging in Little Rock. And I was in the middle of all of that when I started. And
Right.
so that's where I cut my teeth. And, I've had cases between, a juvenile capital murder case, 15, 16-year-old started off as adults with death penalty on the table.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up walking one of those brothers, and the other one, the older one, ended up getting 6 months.
So looking at the death penalty, got 6 months.
Yeah, one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, two of them, and then had federal drug trial that I won. I'm not going to say that I've done. The things that I've done have been fine.
Yeah,
I've done all right. I don't sit there and say, "Hey, I'm like the expert on everything," because I'm not, and that's the first way that you have of getting knocked down to level. But
let me ask you something,
Sure.
and this nothing to do with Ilya, but has to do with what you've seen through that 30 years plus span as an attorney. The people who get their asses in trouble. Have you seen more often than not real contrition on their side, or is it just cognitive dissonance, denial, just wanting to get out of the situation and going back to what they were doing beforehand? I mean, what about those defendants like that? I mean, do they? I would like to be of the belief that that people want to be better people, that they don't want to continue to commit crime, and that they're contrite about that.
In my experience, it's been all over the board.
Okay.
I remember one guy that I had who was charged with aggravated robbery. We had to try his case twice, and both times we ended up having like 10-2 hung juries.
Right.
And they didn't try him the third time. They dismissed it right before the third one. That guy, I remember him being one that I knew that I'd never see again. And as far as I know, he's never gotten in any other trouble.
Okay.
There were some, I think, some who probably had other abilities that once they got out of like the drugs that they were on and what have you, that they went and did normal things. I think there were some, like for instance, one of the juvenile capital murder case, the one who got convicted ended up getting into trouble later.
Right.
And continued to get in trouble, whereas his younger brother that walked never did.
Okay.
And so I've seen it all over the place. I don't know that there's any particular thing. I think it's much more like you said before, because I don't remember if it was the Anglerfish podcast or the fraud with, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the lady's name.
Grace Hendrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking about how one of the a guy that had reached out to you, had wanted some help, but you could see that he just wasn't ready.
Right.
He's not going to sit there. He's not going to do right. And that there was no reason to invest your time, I don't think, at that point, other than just to telling him, hey, look, when you're ready. I think that's pretty much hitting the nail on the head, to be honest with you.
I get it. Are there any that you can talk about? Are there any cases that haunt you or stick with you over the years or not?
There are a couple of things that I am haunted by, but those were images that I saw, and those weren't in criminal cases.
Okay.
And, you know, all of those fortunately haven't been particularly grisly.
Right.
You know, there were a couple of negligence cases where, yeah, like one of them was, I don't know how much you want to go into. One of them, you know, poor lady hit the pavement. That was not very good to look at. And then there was another where it was actually accusations that a child's organs were stolen.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And so I won't describe anything more about what that looked like.
I can imagine.
And in any event, you know, so those are the kinds of things that would haunt me if you're really talking about haunting. But, you know, other than that, though, there were cases I think that I should have, like, for instance, one guy he was charged with battery. The way that it occurred was that he supposedly, while these two vehicles were on the interstate, drove up, and while the cars were both moving side by side, that he shot out of his vehicle into the other vehicle and, you know, put a bullet in that lodged next to this guy's spine. And so the first one hung. And the second one, I thought, you know, I was concerned about the second one after we finished trying it, because, you know, all four of them, people in that vehicle knew my guy's car, could identify my guy. And I didn't think that it had gone quite as well as the first one, but he ends up walking and get a not guilty verdict on that one. And so, you know, those kinds of things, you know, that'll kind of make your blood pressure go up.
Well, yeah, I can imagine. Let me, what did you always want to be an attorney or not?
Yeah, I think pretty much. It was either that or flying.
My middle stepson, he's the pilot now. He finally, you know, he's a flight instructor, so he's doing that to get his 1,500 hours so that he can go off and be a full-fledged pilot. So I get it.
Yeah, and I think it was odd for me, though. I didn't have anybody that was an attorney in my family, and so I really just thought, okay, well, that's what I want to do. But you know, once I became an attorney, then it was somewhat just kind of swimming around to see if I could find my way.
So let's just dive in. You made the comment before we start. I don't know if we got it on tape or not, but the DOJ, that Ilya Lichtenstein was the DOJ's new toy. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's, you know, Ilya Lichtenstein ends up pleading guilty with Heather Morgan back in August 3rd of 23. You know, that's, you know, when he pleads guilty, and he pleads guilty to money laundering in the Bitfinex hack. And we could go back into some of those details. And I think really those details are what kind of prompted me when you read that the other day from this transcript. Those details are what kind of prompted me to say, what the hell, you know, is going on with this testimony? And, you know, so Ilya's testifying at the trial of Roman Sterlingov. I think that's right. Roman Sterlingov. And that Roman Sterlingov was accused of running Bitcoin fog, as I gather. And charged with, ultimately convicted of laundering some $400 million through Bitcoin fog. So Ilya has an obligation under his plea agreement and allocution to testify truthfully and to assist the Department of Justice in I presume, whatever they want, because it was amazing to me that you had sent me 2 days of this transcript. So Ilya starts to testify on February 26th of this year, and his testimony is cut short by the end of the day. So they needed to adjourn for the day, and he picks back up the next day. So the first page, the first file of that transcript has a lot of testimony, cross-examination from a Chainalysis expert. And so that leads into Ilya's testimony. And then we get Ilya's testimony, and then the witness that comes afterwards, not really that important.
Right.
But as I'm sitting there listening to you read that testimony for Ilya, I mean, just from the things that you have already said, and from what I know from listening, reading, for instance, Andy Greenberg's reporting, listening to all various things about Bitfinex, and I think it was 2 years ago that actually I really put my head into it, in talking with you about the details of that particular hack. Listening to probably 6 or 7 hours of Phil Potter talk, that was kind of difficult. So you don't have to, right? that kind of thing. In any event, I really wanted to see what the cross-examination was, because you hadn't gone into it, because it looked like, as you were describing, that it was so general,
right? That
why would they ever put them on? And ultimately, when it comes down to it, the prosecution in this case was trying to elicit evidence from Ilya Lichtenstein to present a point of view of somebody who was a supposed hacker who needed to launder money. And why would you go choose Bitcoin fog?
Right.
Why did, and Ilya testifies about the supposed trustworthiness, about whether or not it was big enough that he was going to get back his own coins, at the end of the day, whether or not it was going to do what he needed to do, which was to obfuscate the source or origin of the money, so that when he transferred it later from Bitcoin fog into some exchange to cash out, that he could have some plausible deniability that, as to the origin of this funds. In other words, like his contention was going to be that, I was an early trader, early investor into, Bitcoin. And so that's what the source of this money was. And of course, at that point in time, really Chainalysis had just started up. And at the time that the Bitfinex hack had happened. And I say it like that this way. Ilya is not qualified as an expert. He's coming in as a fact witness. So we've got two kinds of witnesses. We've got a fact witness, and we've got an expert witness.
Okay.
An expert witness can render an opinion on an item at a trial based upon his knowledge, expertise, education, what have you, that gives him a particular qualifications to be able to render an opinion as to what happened.
Okay.
All right. A fact witness says, I saw this, I did this, this is what happened. So it's, sight, senses, and not necessarily impressions about, what occurred or why it was occurring. You've got these two kinds of witnesses. So when Ilya comes up to testify, the defense attorney has an objection to Ilya's testimony because Ilya's testimony borders on an expert testimony. So there's this colloquy between the court and the defense counsel. And this was the one motion testing evidence before trial. That's a motion in limine that the court had not addressed and needed to address and didn't get to it. I mean, Ilya starts to testify, and then the court says, well, so far he hadn't hurt you. And I'm like, okay. And so what they do is they can't go into Ilya's expertise.
Right.
If he has any expertise.
Right.
The further they go into that, the more that he looks like an expert witness. He would not be qualified as an expert witness under what's called the Daubert standard. Daubert sets forth the requirements and the considerations that a court has to, look at whenever a witness says, "Hey, I'm an expert."
Okay.
Like for instance, you would be an expert on, there you go, dark markets. Okay.
Right.
Or, things like that because of your expertise, your training. You started it, started Shadow Crew.
Right.
So you could testify about that, but you might not be able to testify, for instance, about, the coding necessary to hack a market. I mean, maybe you can.
I couldn't. Absolutely not. I wouldn't even pretend to, but that makes a lot of sense. So an expert is able to give opinions, but that scope has to be very, very narrowly defined, right?
Well, they need to be an expert in a particular area. Yes.
Okay.
Now, granted, there's not a hard, fast rule as to how you describe that. So an expertise might overlap with some other expertise.
Okay.
You might have, like for instance, let me give you one from the medical area. Like for instance, orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons can both go fix somebody's lower back.
Right.
They can both operate on the back. They can both go and do the things necessary. And so you could, if you needed an expert opinion about why this back surgery went awry, you could use either an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon because their disciplines overlap. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But you couldn't necessarily go use a chiropractor because a chiropractor doesn't cut on anybody.
Right.
Right. Even though he might be an expert, but he's not going to be an expert when it comes to surgery.
Okay.
All right. So you're right in the sense that, yes, there is some definition of the area in which the experts qualified. Now, it can be that they could testify to a lot of different things within that expertise.
Right.
So what they were trying to avoid is, they had not disclosed Ilya, United States had not disclosed Ilya Lichtenstein as an expert witness. They had only disclosed him as a fact witness.
Okay.
From the colloquy, that if they were to have disclosed him as an expert witness, they would have said, here is his curriculum vitae. Here is his resume. Here is what he knows. Here's what he's published. Here is what he has studied, and disclose all of those things, and then disclose his opinions about what he's going to testify to. Otherwise, it is completely sandbagging the defense. And that would be that would not satisfy due process,
sure,
at trial.
As you're explaining that, and it makes perfect sense the way you've explained that. So they don't bring him in as an expert able to give opinions. They're just bringing him in on a factual basis. This is what I did. This is what happened. Now my question is, considering that the previous case where he pled guilty to the money laundering and took acceptance of responsibility for the actual hack itself on Bitfinex, my question is, was there a reason that they did that? Because what I'm trying to get at is I'm right now thinking that, okay, we make him a factual witness because if we were to say that he was an expert, that would open the door to discuss some of the stuff that happened during the Bitfinex stuff. Is that correct or not?
It would open the door to that. And that kind of presupposes that he could be qualified as an expert.
Right.
All right. I don't think that's the reason why they didn't go there.
Okay.
It appears to me that they had a witness who could testify something about how Bitfog was used, and maybe about why Bitfog was used from the perspective of a user of Bitfog.
Right.
All right. And to the extent that he had used Bitfog, he could say something about how, within his knowledge, that experience was that that I went through, KYC, did not go through KYC. He had testified that he submitted 1 to 5 Bitcoin to have them laundered and get it back out. So he could do all of that, and kind of, it was just very general testimony.
Right.
About how it worked, and which is why I made the comment that he was like a toy. Now they had this hacker witness who had been money laundering, and we can use him in this, limited purpose. Let's pull him out. Let him take a cruise around the courthouse and see how he does. To see whether or not we could use him anymore. Get him some experience, because he wasn't going to hurt them.
Right.
That was what the clear thing to me was. The reason for that is that if you take a look at the Chainalysis cross-examination, that lawyer, the defense lawyer, was on it. I kind of thought in my mind, this is like somebody in urban warfare going to clear a building.
Right.
He is taking every turn, going around every nook and cranny, clearing out everything he possibly can to limit the damage that Chainalysis expert caused, likely on direct examination.
Right.
So, like, for instance, this was a good example of a use of an expert. So in that testimony, starting off, had done KYC for 1 Bitcoin or 1 hot account, I guess. Was that a BTCE?
It was.
So it was BTCE, which that's a whole nother thing, because that's where the money went from Mt. Gox. Anyway, Sterling Arm has that 1 hot account that had done KYC for. And so they knew that was his account. So the question came up is whether or not there were 4 other accounts, whether or not those were Sterling Off's accounts, because those didn't have names on them. And so the Chainalysis expert was there to say, okay, based upon all of these considerations about when they were created, how they were created, the order that they were created, and about how the first one was his, that these other 4 were his. And so he gave a professional, opinion that, as an expert, that these other 4 accounts were his, because that's what the prosecution needed. The prosecution needed all 5 accounts, for whatever they were going to prove, during the course of the trial. I'm assuming that the testimony would have been that money came through those accounts, and that it ended up going, to some place that was relevant. But I don't have the rest of that testimony.
Undoubtedly, that expert did a lot of damage. Why bring Ilya Lichtenstein in as a factual witness who doesn't really say much of anything? I laundered a few coins through that. Yes, I never met Sterling Gov or anything else like that. So why bring him in when you've got an extremely effective expert that's, hey, this is exactly what the fuck happened?
Not clear. Not clear, other than what I said. We've got a new toy. Let's try him out.
Ilya and his dad.
Ilya's the toy, to be clear.
Right. Yeah. So Ilya and his dad, they're going into witness protection. His dad has never been convicted of anything else like that. I understand that family members are offered the opportunity to go into WITSEC when a primary goes in. I understand that. But what I'm not getting, and it makes sense though, but why is he going into witness protection? Because I was initially told that, and this is just complete conjecture, But I was initially told by the person who gave me these documents that he was going into witness protection because of his testimony against Roman Sterlingoff. But that testimony doesn't really do any damage at all.
No, and the key, the way that you know that from looking at just these two files that have Ilya's testimony in them is the response by the defense attorney to Ilya's testimony. He starts off, and you can tell from the questions that he asks what information he has taken the time and effort to get regarding Ilya.
Right.
So he's asking the basic questions. Have you ever known my client? Have you ever met him? Have you ever talked to him? Did you ever talk to anybody in the administration at Bitcoin Vault? He's going through and he's showing that Ilya Lichtenstein has absolutely no information whatsoever about Roman Sterlingoff.
Right.
And so what damage does Ilya? He's already got the impression, and I can tell very easily that he was taking the plea statement. I'd read the plea statement. Now I'm thinking I probably needed to read Ilya's plea statement a little better.
Sure.
Because, Ilya's plea statement only cops, as I recall, to money laundering. And he was able to go through, and the defense attorney didn't really go much beyond what was in that plea statement.
Right.
Maybe there was a little bit more that his client could have provided to him, but, he's just basically not calling any more attention to Ilya than what he deserved. And that was not much.
Right.
And for this to be a reason, I'm pretty skeptical, man. If this isn't witness protection stuff, if you know what you're,
Right.
what you're looking at, this is, I'm going to testify, and unless somebody is going after everybody who testifies, regardless, he didn't say anything against Sterlingoff. All he did was just to relate his experience, and that was it.
So, I mean, you see what, I guess you can probably guess where I'm going with that. I'm going with witness protection.
Please tell me, because I don't want to guess.
No. I mean, I'm going with him and his dad going into witness protection and complete conjecture. I'm going with the witness protection because his dad was part of FSB, Russian intelligence, comes to the United States, and whether he fled FSB or he was still connected or whatever, once Bitfinex comes around and the hack and the breach and the money laundering, I'm thinking that, okay, now Ilya's there. Ilya is, his PSR is reading 10 to 12 years for the sentence. Kid's not going to do that because he's ratting on everybody. But let's be honest, he didn't really rat on Roman Sterlingoff. So who's he ratting on? And I'm guessing he's ratting on the same reason that we have the Bitfinex case and that SEPA coming in. He's ratting on some higher up Russian intel people. He's whatever his dad knows at that point or whoever his dad's connected to. And to me, and I may be completely wrong, but to me, that screams why he's going into witness protection, because it damn sure isn't a Bitcoin fog testimony.
No. Yeah. I don't see that at all. I mean, the defense attorney just said this guy's not causing me any damage.
Yeah.
And you could see the night and day difference between the Chainalysis cross-examination and the cross-examination of Ilya Lichtenstein. I could say that if I was sitting there at the table and I had Brett Johnson as my consultant sitting next to me, you and I on the fly could have come up with a more damning cross-examination of Ilya Lichtenstein between both of us than what was inflicted on him here. And so
Right.
you can see that the effort was just not put in there. So this isn't it.
You made a comment which I found really interesting, and it hadn't registered with me, but it makes perfect sense. Ilya, in his testimony, he says that he was concerned about specifically Chainalysis. Now, Chainalysis these days, I mean, they are top notch. They are on their game. Any criminal that's out there that's using Bitcoin, by God, you had better be worried about Chainalysis. But back then, what's the likelihood of anyone being worried at all or even knowing what Chainalysis was?
My hesitation my first thought was, okay, right, nobody knew about them. And so I did a quick search because I have done tons of research. My, newspapers.com account that has up to the current times.
Right.
And so I just put in the word Chainalysis. And the first thing that comes up is, in first chronologically, was only in July of 17. It was referring to a New York Times article from June of 17.
Okay.
And even then, the context of the story was Chainalysis's assessment of more macro kinds of information, like most of the Bitcoin is being traded in China.
Right.
As opposed to particularized identification of wallets to a particular person. Now, that had happened. They had done that to some degree with Mount Gox.
Right.
But the timing of it and the reporting of it as Chainalysis, I'm not seeing it. Maybe it was out there. Maybe it was in, you say, hey, look, the difference between criminals and good guys is that criminals will trade information.
Sure.
And maybe the good guys aren't trading information, like that. So that, unless that information was traded or known privately, I just don't see it.
Well, here's the thing, Christopher. It wasn't. That's it. I mean, criminals were not worried about Chainalysis back then.
I do have a little bit of a tidbit that I looked up because I do this all the time. I looked up Chainalysis to see, first off, since they were based in New York, looked up their incorporation in New York. And initially I saw it as, 2016, but it's a foreign corporation. So right. I looked up, of course, Delaware is where you start with the vast majority. And that's where Michael Groniger and Jonathan Levin did that. But, if there was ever a date of the year, in a year that you would incorporate a company like Chainalysis, what would it be?
Right.
And,
right.
What would it be? And it so happens that it was incorporated in Delaware on 4/20 of 2015. So I thought that was just kind of I thought that was kind of funny, but, still. They help out the Mt. Gox,
right?
Mt.
They
Gox
did.
bankruptcy
and
trustee.
Hey, I don't want to say anything negative against Chainalysis at all because they do outstanding work. But the but here is that chatter because Ilya says in his testimony that he learned how to hack by reading forums. That's bullshit. He also says that he learned how to money launder by reading forums. I can believe that because it was done like an idiot would try to launder money. But if that's how he's learning things, and I know this because I was embedded in these groups way the hell back then too, there was no chatter about Chainalysis among any of those criminal groups at all at that time. Yet Ilya comes in his testimony against Roman and he says, yes, I was concerned specifically about Chainalysis. Now, in my show that I did before you came on, I was very adamant about saying that every single answer that Ilya was giving was a coached answer.
Yes.
And to me, that kind of screams that. It's like, hey, we need you to testify against this Roman guy. We going to have a Chainalysis expert. Were you hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge? Was you worried about Chainalysis at all when you did your stuff? That's what it screams to me.
Exactly, and I think that it was all coached because they had to keep a short leash on him so that he would not start to venture into expert testimony.
Right.
So at best, he's kind of like adding salt. I mean, not adding a whole lot of spice to the, to the stew that, they're cooking up. He's just adding a pinch of salt, and that's about it. He's not doing a whole lot in terms of adding, to the fact that Romanov did, Sterlingov did the crime that he was charged for.
Right. And Sterlingov, he's been convicted, like you said, $400 and some odd million money laundering. And I'm guessing that by, you go by the federal sentencing guidelines, I'm guessing he's going to get a boatload of time at the end of the day, unless he's got a lot of people that he can rat on too.
Yeah, I didn't look at the, I mean, you would presume that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Don't want to presume, but
no.
It's just like, when they got Shadow Cruise server, when they got Alphabase server, when they got Silk Road server,
right.
I'm sure that there's a lot that, a lot of downstream people that he can turn on, but,
right.
The only thing that I could imagine, and as I was thinking about that, Chainalysis initially was offering their services to exchanges,
right,
or to people. I guess any of the financial institutions who were going to then had to do as adjunct to their KYC. Not only do we know who you are, but we know where your money came from.
Right.
And back then, if you were ever concerned about them, it was from the endpoint backward. We know who you are. We know that you have cryptocurrency. Now, where did it come from?
Right.
And it wasn't necessarily a concern that, okay, I stole Bitcoin. Now they are going to trace it to forward in time to catch me. They don't know who I am, that they are going to find out who I am because they can go from the stolen coin forward, as opposed, I think that the concern, if there was one at that time, was going backward.
I think you're right.
And so I don't, I think that that's partly the reason why, if there was ever a concern, at that point in time, that it would come back relevant to Bitcoin fog, because that's where it was obfuscated.
And you make a good point. And just so that people know what happens today, if you go on Reddit, there's a Coinbase subreddit, and there's a lot of people that complain on that Coinbase subreddit that they've had their accounts restricted, frozen, suspended, what have you. Some of those people that complain, they have had their accounts suspended, restricted, frozen, whatever you want to call it, for months. A couple of people for a couple of years, and they're crying about that, wondering why that's going on. I'll tell you why that's going on. Coinbase and other exchanges, the more legitimate exchanges, they have a system that when you register, when you go to cash out crypto or connect your wallet to Coinbase's exchange or anything else, they scan that wallet. And not only do they scan that wallet, but they look at the history of every token that's come into that wallet. So if you've ever participated in some sort of NFT money laundering scandal, they know that. If you have tried to wash your Bitcoin with Bitcoin fog, whatever the other friggin' washers are that are out there or that were out there. If they've seen that, if they've seen anything that's suspect with those tokens that's in that wallet, guess what happens? You get frozen. You absolutely do. Then they report that shit. And that's not the only thing that happens. At the same time, the feds are out there looking at and using Chainalysis and looking at all the transactions that are going through. So if there's anything that's suspect, you get frozen. That's how effective companies today like Chainalysis truly are, and they are. So, bear that in mind when you're, fucking around with crypto. If you're not squeaky clean and you're using a CEX, a certified or whatever they call that exchange, not the centralized exchange. If you're using the centralized exchange, the chances of you being able to cash out some of those ill-gotten gains, it's looking dim and dimmer every single day. Ilya's testimony, and I know you just got that testimony and you read the plea agreement in the past. When he talks about the way the hack happened and the way he laundered money, does that, and I understand those answers were coached, but does that give any insight at all to his potential expertise or lack thereof of being able to do those things?
I didn't see it at all.
Okay.
I am, let's say that if your coding skills were just above a script kiddie, I'm not even a script kiddie. I could have come up with that story right then and there.
Right.
Because that's the way that hacks work. Somebody's in the system for 3 or 4 months, maybe even longer. They are moving laterally through the system. They gain entry through phishing. That, you can name a story because it's happened and it's in virtually any, you could listen to all of Darknet Diaries and hear that 50 times.
Right.
You could listen to Brett Johnson and hear that, you can listen to it wherever. And he could have easily, that was the thing that struck me in large part, was that it was so general that if there was a place where the defense attorney thought maybe in advance that, and I don't know whether he realized it or not, and maybe it was not that important. I mean, you've got tons and tons of work as a defense attorney to go, defend a trial like this. I mean, I'm not sure how long exactly that it was, but given, from the conviction date to just this testimony, I mean, there was a good month or more. And you're doing that every day. You got a new witness and, have you done this beforehand? You've got all your documents ready and, just loads and loads of work. Okay. So you've got to pick and choose sometimes. And Ilya Lichtenstein is not the kind of witness that I would have decided to go after, but he didn't plead to the hack.
Right.
I mean, that's point number one. You say that you hacked. You didn't plead to the hack, did you?
Right. Let's pause there. So you're right. He did not plea to the hack. So what happens from a judicial or a law enforcement standpoint? What happens when you've got somebody up there that says, yeah, I did it, but he never pleads to what the hell does that even mean?
Nothing more than that. I mean, they had to have brought the charges at the time. I mean, those were things that, were, part of the same set of facts and circumstances.
Right.
They're not two separate events. The law wants us to take care of all of the things and all of the charges that happen in the scope of, the crime that was committed.
Right.
And it's called, in legal terms, it's called a res, R-E-S. Okay. The thing that happened.
Okay.
And so if you, let's say you were to break into somebody's house, you might have burglary, you might have, you might steal something, you might have any number of things that you do in there. They were required to charge all of those things at once.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, oh, well, we forgot to charge you for stealing that vacuum cleaner, whatever it was. They didn't name it. And the trial's already happened. So they can't come back and do that. So there is this somewhat double jeopardy, provides some immunity for copping to it later.
Okay.
So you've already tried me for what that set of facts and circumstances. Yeah, you had the ability to try me at that time. You didn't do it. You're SOL.
Okay. So SOL on that. Now, on a federal standpoint, when he says doesn't that at least supposed to factor into some sort of relevant conduct? So for those who don't know, relevant conduct, when I plead guilty to those 39 felonies that I pled guilty to, all right, that's what I'm pleading guilty to. But if there's something else that happened, say like I'm the Silk Road guy who they catch running a dark web market, and I also tried to have several people murdered. Well, they're not going to take me to court for the murders, but when I'm sentenced, the probation office and the prosecutor, they sit down, they're little happy asses, and they have a little powwow, and they come up with this thing called a PSR, a pre-sentence report. And that pre-sentence report has in those attempted hitman jobs. And that is considered relevant conduct, and I can be sentenced for that as well. It doesn't look like with Ilya that even though he says that I did the attack as well, it doesn't look like any of that is being considered as relevant conduct in his PSR and with the sentencing of that 10 to 12 years.
I am looking, I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but
Sure.
I'm in agreement with you. I don't see that's there either. Let's suppose that everything that you have speculated is correct about Eugene.
Right.
It would not be the first time that, in my assessment, that a son or a father for a son had ever copped to something to get a family member loose.
Right.
And absolved.
So
given that, because this kind of dovetails with the SEPA stuff.
Right.
Because why would you have any type of national security interest involved? And it's not been publicized that Ilya has any. We've only got Eugene, and, allegedly. And that's the only place that I see a connection to the Classified Information Procedures Act. You got to control or protect whatever that was classified. And the only place that it could be classified is that, or, not unless there was there was one other really curious place. And as I'm thinking back through your episodes, and was it Mike Jones, Anonymous? Who was the fellow that sniffed out Stingray?
Daniel Rigmaiden.
Okay, Rigmaiden. All right. So Rigmaiden, sniffs out Stingray through because he knows his own OPSEC, and he ends up getting FOI and finally finds one word in there. Right. I think as the story goes.
So for the listeners who don't know what's going on there, when I was working with the Secret Service and screwing them over, one of our targets was this gentleman by the name of Daniel Rigmaiden. I taught Daniel Rigmaiden how to commit tax return identity theft. He goes on to be very prolific about it, and he's caught by the feds used back then they called it triggerfish. Today they call it Stingray. It's this cell phone spoofing device that can locate you within a 7-foot radius. All right, so they find him by that. Daniel was looking at several years in prison. Daniel fires his lawyers. He becomes his own attorney. He serves lots of time in a county jail defending himself. He files hundreds, if not a couple of thousand, of FOIA requests. In one of these FOIA requests, it mentions a cell phone spoofing device, which is what was used to identify him, to locate him. Once he sees that, he understands that the feds, they don't want any information at all about Stingray devices being released to the public. So he comes to court with that. Prosecution sees that, and they say, hey, if you'll go ahead and plead guilty, we'll cut you out right now He does, and he walks out. That was what happened with Daniel Rigmaiden. So I just wanted the listeners to know what was going on with Daniel at that point in time.
And so they cut him out because essentially, in legal terms, it's not exactly blackmail, it's gray mail.
Right.
It is saying, I'm going to release out into the world this information you don't want to release. And I'm not as important. My sentence is not as important as the fact that you need to keep that private.
Right.
So it's a weighing of the secrecy versus that. So the Classified Information Procedures Act is designed to keep defendants from using the disclosure of that secret to, leverage for their freedom is what it amounts to, or reduce sentence or what have you. So where in Ilya Lichtenstein, in that set of facts, the one thing that's glossed over is breaking that encryption.
Right.
Now, we both know that it could have been that they could have said that they broke the encryption, but what they really got him to do was to talk.
Right.
It could have been maybe it was just a 8-character password that they put through just some off the shelf password cracker and got it. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, that was the only thing that I saw was that whole thing about how they got into that cloud account.
Right.
And the encryption involving that cloud account, and whether or not there was something in there that could have been classified. Otherwise, the only other thing that would have been possibly Eugene.
Right.
And, listen, one thing we haven't gotten into, we did a couple of years ago, was the fact of the 25,000 Bitcoin. So the hack happens in 120,000. Well, okay, so it was what? 119,754 Bitcoin. Okay. So you do the numbers, and what gets peeled off of that are 25.
Right.
In round numbers, that's 20%. It's 20.8%.
Okay.
So, in round numbers, it's just 20%, What
happened to that 20%? It sounds to me like you owe some son of a bitch his part.
Sounds like a cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we were kind of talking about a couple of years ago.
Right.
Sounds like a cut to me. And otherwise, why wouldn't they have started to peel off all of the rest of the Bitcoin rather than leaving them in a single wallet to be,
You're right.
to be taken eventually.
Right. So you pay some SOB his cut for something, allowing access in. Maybe he was a collaborator. Maybe Eugene in his past, had helped out with a breach, that Bitfinex breach, and that was part of what was supposed to go to whoever at that point. But you're absolutely right. That 20%, which is what it is, that 20% absolutely sounds like you owe somebody their cut. And for those crypto people out there, I understand you got that well wallet. I got it. All right. You got that well wallet that's got a couple 100,000 Bitcoins. You don't want all the Bitcoins left in that one wallet in case some son of a bitch comes in and gains access to that wallet. You want to break it up. But here's the thing. They didn't break it up. They took 20% out as a payment to something, for something. Now, I don't know what that is. And we can sit here and talk about that, but you're bringing up a couple of really important points here. SEPA. So either it's the way they access that cloud account, which is questionable because I don't think there's really a whole lot of secrecy there. I think that Ilya, his dumbass, had something written down or it was his personal cloud account. Once they identified him from Coinbase, they were able to contact Microsoft and say, hey, does this son of a bitch have a cloud account? And they're like, yeah, well, look, it's right here. So I don't think that's the SEPA. I think that if you're looking at it, I think it to me, that Occam's razor thing, I think the most logical, most likely scenario is that Eugene is the reason that we had CIPA, the Classified Information Act, why we had that take place in the Ilya Lichtenstein Bitfinex money laundering thing.
I mean, the theory fits in my estimation, because you had in the last certainly in the last episode, but this wasn't the first time that you had talked about it.
Right.
To be clear, about how you came to find out, because you were barred from having freedom of information. Right. Finally, you understand about how that Secret Service computer was hacked,
right?
And who did it, and the interview, and you get that. I think. Well, I'm not going to say, because I think you haven't said. You've said where you got some of that from, and I have a suspect where you got some of the other. I
got most of the information came from John Giannone. Is where most of that information came from. From there, because I did, when I signed my plea agreement, I can't submit any FOIA request. And, when I signed it, I was like, well, shit, that's just part of it. I don't give a damn. But looking back, I'm thinking that the reason they had me sign that is because, hey, you let this asshole have so many of these documents, he's going to be able to put some of this stuff together, and we don't want him, of all people, because he doesn't. I'm not for sale. So you give some bitch like me information like that, yeah, I'm going to run with it. I'm absolutely going to run with it. Let me ask you something, because it seems to me that I've lost this. All right, I really was under the impression that when I recorded those shows a couple of years ago, that it would result in the truth, whatever that truth is, in coming out. And, now, because of the Classified Act, because of the witness protection, because of all that stuff and more, it really seems to me that that's not going to happen. And my question is, how do you bang that drum long enough, and how do you bang it to force whatever that truth is to come out, when you've got a government that doesn't seem very open to getting it out?
I don't know how you do it other than what you're doing, which is to keep banging that drum. And there are plenty of circumstances where people do that. I mean, I don't want to get overly political, but if you were ever to listen to Michael Cohen,
right,
who was, Trump's attorney, his office was raided and what have you. And he will continually say, that he has an FOI request, and he knows the number of days in which they have provided him 3 pages, and that they've been ordered to give him so many pages per month, and they've not done it. And he continues to complain about it. So I don't know what the answer to that particular question is. I have no idea. I don't know exactly, Britt. And you want the truth to come out, and that's great. And I don't fault you for that.
Yeah.
I've often kind of wondered whether or not there was anything else that was there other than just to have the truth come out about, what people were doing. And I guess that the truth involving that was the other people who other people you were helping the Secret Service to, uncover their issues.
I mean, Christopher,
things that they were doing.
So, this one guy that, and I mentioned him on the previous show, he got a little upset that I mentioned him. He gives me He gives me the testimonies. And literally, so he sends them over to me. It's on Telegram. He sends them over to me. And then the next line, he says, now go off and do a show about that, which I said, abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah. In fairness, though, in fairness, and he shouldn't be that, I don't think he should be quite that upset about, these testimonies, because you could get these testimonies through,
right.
Just paying a form from the court reporter.
He was upset because I said at the beginning of the show, I said he is absolutely guilty. He is. He did that shit. So he was upset about that. And I understand you're trying to get the pardon. I understand that. And then he was upset because I mentioned in the show that, hey, his attorneys sent over the sample motion to the DOJ. And the DOJ responded, hey, if you don't go ahead and file that, we'll help you with the pardon. So he was upset that I mentioned that. And here I am mentioning it again because that's what he told me.
Well,
so if you've got a DOJ,
truth is the truth, right?
It is. If you've got a DOJ that's willing to pardon you because there might be some chance of the truth getting out, what does that say about your DOJ?
It says that you would rather have them operate much more transparently and do the right thing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't. I don't know.
I'm sorry to rag on you about this, Chris.
No, I know it's not unexpected, to be honest with you. I look at these situations, and whether we're talking about Ilya Lichtenstein's testimony or, we're talking about any of these other things, there's always some broader picture, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that I don't have a broader picture. Why is it that somebody makes the choice that, oh, I'm going to favor you over him?
Yeah.
The only reason why I'm nominally hesitant, I don't disagree with you. And and it might very well be that it is the greater of two rights. We talk about the lesser of two evils, but
right.
There is a greater of two rights. Yes,
right.
They're right. Yes, this other thing is right too, but we can't let you know why. And I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe, maybe it does come out. I mean, nobody lives forever.
That's true.
When we were talking 2 years ago, I think Eugene was, 75 years old, and I was wondering whether or not he, I don't know about his health. I know that, I all of a sudden, I think, pulled out some statistics on Alzheimer's at that age.
Right.
And, the rates of it and, how long is that going to happen? And I had often wondered and kind of mused to myself, and I don't have any proof whatsoever, mused to myself about, okay, well, if Eugene did a hack and he was entitled to a cut, that meant that maybe he did it for somebody.
Maybe
he did it for somebody, and that he wasn't really into all of this crypto stuff that his Brazelcon was into.
Right.
Right. So we're going to go rap about it on some cringy video, and that these younger folks, they can do that kind of stuff. They're able
right.
to handle that. And especially if it was your cut, who would you give it to?
Right.
Well, you might not give it to your son, given that he better not sell that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't give it to my boy. I would be, trying to ramp up a car collection. That's what I would be doing of BMWs that I could then afford to work on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could get them cheap if you can afford to work on them. No, but so that's the whole. I mean, it seems to me, if you're applying Occam's razor to that,
yeah,
who would you trust with your cut? The question is who you did it for.
Right. You're right.
And that's where I keep I'm not pointing any, but earlier in the show, I mentioned somebody who I listened to about 6 or 7 hours of him describing the Bitfinex hack. And boy, I don't know, in my own opinion and assessment, sketchy as he could possibly be. And starts into laughter whenever, this uncomfortable laughter, or all of a sudden doesn't know anything. Like we were sitting there watching the coins go out for 3 or 4 hours. It was the most I've ever seen. And still to this day, don't know how it happened.
Right. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, crypto as a whole, we've got Tether. We've got fake volume. I mean, everybody's got to laugh when you say Tether.
Well, given the fact that it's Bitfinex's principals who are also part of Tether and who ended up getting cap of $1 billion something. So why worry about 120 Bitcoin?
Right.
120K Bitcoin, right?
So you got all this stuff. And even today, I mean, you've got a crypto environment. And Lord knows I'm trading crypto these days because I'm trying to get another revenue stream so that I can basically tell people to, screw off when I want to do that. But you've got an environment with crypto that's rife with fraud, that at the same time you've got legitimate brick and mortar investment firms that are coming up with ETFs that are wanting to do all this stuff with crypto. And it seems to me that crypto is really kind of propped up on a bed of lies and fraud and deceit. And if that house of cards ever does fall, beginning with Tether, oh my God. Yeah, I understand that in the United States, right now we've only got a 7% overall adoption rate among the population. Now, at the height of the last bull run, it was around 12%. But you get the amount of money that can be made on that house of cards is enough where, by God, you might have some people that want to run with it, and then go from there.
I mean, Germany post-World War II started printing money left and right, and it caused hyperinflation. And there is no cap on the tether that can be produced. So all of the people but there is a limit as to what Bitcoin can be mined.
Right.
And so the rate at which the money that is poured into the system, which can be used to buy Bitcoin, is increasing at an exponential rate higher than the number of Bitcoin that's out there. That's going to cause the Bitcoin to go, to start increasing in value greatly. Right. Until
I like that until
the rug, if it ever is, pulled out from under Tether, and they are very well, at least in the things that I have seen in these interviews, are very reticent to talk about no audits,
right,
and about whether or not they're actually backed, because it's a bank run. I mean, classic bank run.
You're right. I mean, if Tether were to fall, so it comes out, Tether, we're not. I think most people already understand that Tether is not backed on a dollar per Tether basis. Most people have already kind of accepted that, even though they've not came out and said that shit. But if Tether were to ever fall, so we've got Bitcoin right now at 68, 69. Most people are anticipating during this run, during this year, that Bitcoin is going to reach 150K a pop. So, but if Tether weren't there, I would hate to think about what the actual real world value of Bitcoin is. It's certainly not 150. It's not 68. It's probably not 20. So we're looking around 10K maybe at that point. And at that point, think about all the other chains that trend with Bitcoin. So make no mistake, Ethereum is going to reach $10,000 because of the way that Bitcoin is increasing as well. And that's only happening because of things like Tether that's out there.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
Ethereum is Bitcoin's wingman.
That's it. You're right. You're absolutely right. And what you said, I want to close this out on this thought, but what you said, that greater good. And that makes some sense. It does. I mean, I'm not privy to whatever that greater good may be. You're not either. It pisses me off that I am absolutely convinced that Eugene had a hand in that Bitfinex attack. Conjecture. But I'm convinced of that. And it pisses me off that, and there may be, maybe there's something out there that's taking place that is that greater good that we are not privy to and that we will probably never be privy to. I would hope and pray, and that's why I went off into that tether thing for a moment there. I would hope and pray that the greater good is not keeping the entire crypto market propped up on a bed of tether lies.
I hadn't even thought about that, to be honest with you. I was hoping that maybe it would be that he has some information ongoing and connections that might help us out in the grand scheme of things. But, I don't know that.
I don't either. Christopher, dude, I love you, man. I think you're outstanding. Like I said, you're looking very lawyerly today.
Well, I thought I'd dress up to be on your show.
Well, and I thought I would wear the hat to make you feel at home.
Yeah, and sorry about this headset. I mean, we
really
tried to get it to,
you are.
Tried to get it to work without it beforehand.
Let me ask you something. Since now you've been on the Criminal Thoughts thing, what do you think about coming back on every now and then to comment about some cases or something like that, or just to shoot the shit? I'd
be happy to. Right. I will. I'll put my head into whatever it is and see if I can't speak intelligently.
Dude, you speak a hell of a lot more intelligently than I do. We know I ramble. I talk more than any white person on the planet not to say anything.
Yeah, there's that uncomfortable laughter in the background.
I know, right? Brian's like, yeah, he does that. I don't know if I can laugh all the way yet. He does that.
True.
Yeah. I've heard Brett ramble a few times, but so many things that you teach people.
I've got some knowledge, but it takes a minute to get there. Well, Christopher, man, I appreciate you coming on. Truly, dude.
We're glad to be here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I'll absolutely want you to come on again.
Will do.
All right, so today's guest, as you just saw, was Christopher Anderson. He's an outstanding attorney out of Arkansas. He gave some insight into Ilya Lichtenstein, Bitfinex, just the overall way some of those processes work as well. Criminal insight today. Christopher mentioned something that is really interesting to me, that idea of the greater good. So bear in mind that law enforcement, one of the primary, most important assets that law enforcement has is criminal informants. So there's a reason that law enforcement likes people to rat on each other, because a lot of the time, the people that they're looking to put in prison, they can't get enough evidence on them. All right. So they rely on higher ups, sometimes lower ups, that testify against other people or give information against other people. Being that all things are good across the board when we're talking about putting people behind bars or bad actors behind bars, it's important to understand that sometimes one good outweighs the other goods that are out there. So those criminal assets, those informants, they become very important after a while. And unfortunately, sometimes people like me, we don't get to see what that greater good might be. Now, I say that because in the case of Ilya Lichtenstein, Eugene Lichtenstein, I'm hoping that Christopher is right. I'm hoping that there is a greater good out there that outweighs the improper investigations and lack of discovery for Operation Anglerfish, that thing where I worked with the United States Secret Service and we ended up targeting and arresting at least 9 people. And those people did not have fair trials at the end of the day. So criminal insight, there might be a greater good that outweighs the good that we see that's swept aside. That's swept aside sometimes and leaves a foul taste in our mouths, because believe you me, I have a very bad taste in my mouth from Operation Anglerfish, from the way the Bitfinex case has played out, to the way that the people that I helped put in prison were not given fair trials at all. And it looks like, at least right now, it looks like that their cases will never be looked at in a just manner. That's today's Criminal Insight. And with that, we're going to close out the show. My name is Brett Johnson. This is the Criminal Thoughts Podcast. The thing is that I saw this thing on TikTok the other day, and I'm rarely on TikTok anymore, but it was talking about Navy SEALs. And it mentioned that a lot of the success in Navy SEALs is understanding that by simply giving up, by more or less giving it over to God, that at that point is where you find success in that thing that you're wanting to find. And they gave the example of the swimming pool that Navy SEALs go through. So there's a point in SEAL training where they tie your hands behind your back, they tie your feet, they throw you in a pool. And it's all about, hey, can you survive for so many minutes without having to be rescued? So you see the people who struggle, who try to stay above water, that they have a lot of trouble, that they have to oftentimes be rescued by the people who are outside of the pool. It's the people who give up, the people who allow themselves to sink down to the bottom, come and then thrust themselves back up to the top enough to get a breath, and then come back down. They can survive for 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes. And it's that idea of giving things over to God. The reason I say that is that I have, since I began speaking, and even before that, I've always kind of wanted to be on a TV show. I wanted my own show. And I've talked over the years to many production companies, and many production companies have loved the shit out of Brett Johnson, but they've not known what to do with him, and they've been very reticent about doing anything in the scam space because I guess they've not had a lot of success there. Now, I say that because recently I've kind of adopted the opinion of, you know what, I simply don't give a shit anymore, and I don't. And it's when I came to that conclusion, that realization, that understanding, that I understood that, hey, you know, really what I would want my show to be is Criminal Thoughts and the Brett Johnson Show. That's what I would want it to be, because that's exactly what makes me happy on my, you know, when I'm doing this shit, is the stuff that I'm talking about, being a better person, talking about the criminal insights and Ilya Lichtenstein and the different types of frauds and scams and hustles that are out there and the crime that's out there. So I'm actually doing exactly what I would want to be doing if I were on TV. And I'm happy with that. Right now I don't have a lot of followers. I get comments frequently about, you know, you got a great show, man. I just don't understand. I don't know why you ain't exploded yet. And Shayna and Brian tell me, well, it's because YouTube just doesn't know who the fuck you are. You keep changing subjects. You talk about all kinds of bullshit. Shit, today you talked about Mad Max. And you talked about people's ovaries splatting on the ground. It's no wonder the algorithm can't find you. The algorithm isn't even used to. The algorithm has never seen anyone talking about ovaries falling on the ground and going splat. You, my friend, are a trend setter. So that being said, you know, if you guys like the show, hit that subscribe button for me. All right. Tell your friends about it. You know, maybe one of these days we'll start to explode with numbers. I think we will. I think that as Brett Johnson becomes, you know, as I bitch, moan, and complain more, and talk about the stuff that I think is important, and maybe that you think is important, maybe that starts to resonate, and maybe we become more popular. Regardless of whether that happens or not, I am not going to stop doing this show. I am not going to stop with the voices, with the characters, with the bitch moaning and complaining, with the screams every now. I'm not going to stop that because that is what brings me happiness. It brings me joy. And I like being joyful. I do. You may not know it, but it brings me a lot of joy to talk about Heather Morgan's ovaries falling on the ground and going splat. That leaves me with a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling because hopefully maybe that'll happen someday. That'd be okay. So anyway, I'm Brett Johnson, Criminal Thoughts Podcast. Send me a note, Brett at the Brett Johnson Show. That's right. Comment because I read your comments. I do. I had some guy, Brian put he put a video out the other day. Actually, it's like yesterday, the day before, and I forgot what the hell I was talking about. But the comment said, "Hey, Brett, come on, man. You know that alcohol is much more dangerous than mushrooms." And I sat there looking at it, I was like, "What the fuck, man? Are you drunk? Is that what it is?" Because I got to tell you, I'd be much happier with a 13-year-old drinking a little beer instead of downing some mushrooms all of a sudden. So you can't tell me that one is better, that alcohol is worse than a mushroom. Now, I've not done mushrooms. I've done DMT. I like that shit. Yes, I do. But I've not done mushrooms. I would, but I understand they taste like shit. And I got to tell you, I'm not of the mind to eat shit. I'm not. Now, you make that taste like pumpkin pie, we can do something, but I understand that mushrooms taste like crap, and I ain't going to do that. Just saying, throw that out there. I don't know how I got off on that tangent. My name is Brett Johnson. I guess you guys know that. All right, stay safe out there. Stay secure. Stay vigilant. More importantly, and hey, guys, this matters, especially, I watched that train wreck of a debate last night. Trump obviously is going to be the next United States president. How that shit show ends, I have not a clue. I don't. I do know that Trump holds grudges. All right. And I know he's got a whole shitload of people to hold grudges against. So how that shit show actually plays out after January 20th of next year, I don't know. The only thing I know is that I should not be going to a camp because I've been saying Donald Trump should be president because I know how that those camps are out there someplace. Anyway, I say that because we should be sitting back and objectively doing the right damn thing every day. All right. And if we're not, we should recognize that we're not doing the right thing. And we should, the next day when we wake up, figure out how to fix that, address it, and do the right thing from there. We should work every single day to be a better person than we were the day previous. I talk politics these days. I'm not an expert on politics. I'm not, but I will tell you this, that if you are left wing, right wing, you're already going down the wrong goddamn path. There's no side that's for you. Government is on its own side. It's not there to benefit you. It's there to benefit the government, whether that be Democrat or Republican. All right. So sweep that stuff to the side. Sweep it to the side and understand that at the end of the day, we are all human beings. It doesn't matter if somebody's Democrat, Republican, left wing, right wing, woke, unwoke, whatever. Can you do something to benefit your fellow human being? Can you do the right damn thing at the end of the day? And that's today's message. And that is how we close things out. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.